Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel Podcast. This is a prequel edition. We're finishing up. Today we talk Revenge of the Sith. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man with a malicious plot that takes 20 years or so to get through, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
Not from a Jedi.
That was the part where even in the preview you kind of went, ooh, that looks delicious.
Well, I have a lot to say about that scene. I'll wait till we get there. And it's unusually positive for this movie. But that line reading deserves special attention. Because he's not overacting as such, but he's relishing every word.
Yeah.
And it's
absolutely.
something only Ian McDiarmid can do.
I was just going to say that he really is the only actor I can think of. I think we mentioned this before, that he even gets better the more he hams it up.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this, and obviously in this movie you have two transitions that you've been that you've been waiting for
that
30 years.
Since 1977.
Since 1977. And with the Emperor, with Palpatine's transformation into the Emperor, the first time we see him, he's a wrinkly space wizard. So all we want to see is him turn into that wrinkly space wizard. So you can go as big as you want because that's what we want. Whereas with Vader, we there's an element of cool and sophistication about Vader that we need we need to handle with kid gloves.
And they do not.
But with the Emperor, you don't need any gloves.
Right.
Gloves off.
Right.
Just go for it. Chew that scenery.
Throw it in the Bunsen burner.
I mean,
go nuts.
I guess he couldn't chew the scenery because there's nothing physical in the room when he's acting. But
Yeah, no, never.
he's chewing green screen.
Well, let me ask you this right off the bat, because one of the first things I'm going to say about this movie, listen, we've already ranked.
Yeah. This
is at the bottom of both of our lists.
It is, yeah.
And yet, and the reason it's at the bottom of the list is because it's not a movie. This is basically 4 scenes. That's the movie.
4 half-hour scenes. I'll go with that, yeah.
And the one thing I'll say about it, though, is that by the time we get to this movie, digitally, I think it looks better than the other 2.
And it's a curse and a blessing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it looks much better, but there's much more of it. And they over-rely on us being interested in watching it.
Right,
because,
exactly
this is
right.
the movie which is 30 minutes worth of spaceships taking off and landing.
You mentioned that, yeah.
And that makes sense because the effects look better than they ever have, so you want to showcase them. So those sequences will naturally be extended to show more of what you can do. But it gets incredibly
It's the same thing
tedious.
they were doing with Jar Jar Binks. Well, we just had him moving in the background because we wanted to see what we could do with him.
They were like, yeah, exactly.
That's the equivalent for this movie.
Yeah. It's their Emperor's New Clothes, right? It's like,
right.
It's the thing they think is reinventing the wheel. And what they don't realize is that it has limited potential in terms of dramatic storytelling. So it's exactly like Jar Jar. It's like we can show the ships taking off and landing. Like, we can show it all.
Isn't that great?
Great. It's like, but we got by without it narratively until this point.
We were fine.
We just assumed they got there and assumed they left.
Yeah, that's funny.
It is, yeah. So I think that's a big part of it. But there are definitely moments in this film where I think they peaked in terms of digital effects, at least in this prequel trilogy. I mean,
For sure.
the sequel trilogy, I think, is a whole nother stage of
it is, of course,
practical digital fusion
and the melding of the two.
Well, I think they've achieved the vision of what they wanted in Phantom Menace, which was an entirely coherent digital world around the characters, and they more or less get there, I think. Well, I guess the world is the important thing. They're still not there with integrating people into that world necessarily.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with you there.
But closer.
But
than
it looks better than it's
movies,
funny.
Yeah.
It looks better than it ever has, and it looks good enough that it takes a minute. I think for me, when I'm watching this movie, I'll forget that they're standing in front of nothing for quite a while, and then I'll notice it in the background and think to myself, "Ah, fuck."
Yeah.
Well, I guess good for you, because it took me a second to realize that, but
that's what. Yeah.
I did realize that. But I want to say this too, because I just rewatched this movie for the purposes of us talking about it.
We've been recording
today.
these episodes for conservatively 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. This movie is at the bottom of my list.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has one front action scene.
Action movie.
One action movie,
It's a
by the way.
self-contained action movie that begins this movie.
You know what I heard, too? I was listening to the commentary. That first scene, as first conceived, was over an hour long.
Was it?
And then
was it filmed, or did they get to the point where they filmed that hour, or did they?
I think
give
they
up as
filmed
they
a
were
lot
filming
of it. And
Right.
they just kept saying, we knew we had to pare down,
It's
pare down.
25 minutes, which is long enough.
I had 23, but
Okay.
yes. But I want to say this. I think there's something about this movie that makes it easier to go down. It's an easier watch to me than the other films. It doesn't like rile me up like the other two movies.
I hard disagree.
Okay.
This movie riles me up more than the other two.
All right.
Like I said before, I think the worst examples of everything in this trilogy are in this film, for me.
Interesting.
And,
I think if you pay attention to its if you don't pay attention to its glaring problems, you can just kind of sit back and enjoy it.
I mean, that's okay. So I hard disagree that the movie of the movies in the prequel trilogy, this riles me the most. Will I sit down and watch it and enjoy it? As with all these prequel films, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the scenes I rather like. The sequences I think are really well done.
Yeah.
It simply does not hang together in any way that makes sense to me. And
well, on that we agree.
And I think that's a big problem. I guess it's just a conceptual problem behind it. Like, I understand what Lucas is trying to do with the Phantom Menace, whether I agree with it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Attack of the Clones, I see a very clear vision of making a love letter to Pulp Fiction. And
you don't know what he's doing here.
I feel like it's like, and then there's this one, because we've got it. We've got an end point.
We have to finish it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just have to get there in as entertaining a way as possible.
Right.
And it feels like that's all they're thinking about.
No, I agree with you there. I don't think that can be argued.
It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's far from the best.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's something within it, because the effects are much better. Of the three movies, this one, I think the effects have finally caught up to all of their ideas better than the other two movies. So they're able to achieve more. But
stylistically, I think this is the weakest.
Yeah.
Of the three movies. And all the accusations of the other two films, I think, apply more to this one in terms of cartoonishness, busyness of look.
Mm-hmm.
I think the crimes are was gonna say that was far more grievous than, and that's just because every example in my head revolves around General Grievous.
Okay, yeah. The first thing I thought of when you said that is that, you're having this enormous lightsaber battle on a volcano planet, and then they're on this little spit of metal on a lava river, and then out of nowhere, just a little robot pops up, looks at them both, and takes off. And
there's a few moments like
really
this
cracks me up every time I see it. What possessed you to put that there? Why? Because, sir? I ask you why.
I have a theory. Like sometimes if George Lucas gets too close to regular filmmaking, he feels the need to throw in some kind of.
He feels sick.
Yeah, it's like this doesn't feel right. Throw in a CGI bug or a robot or something.
Right.
I have an example of a hard cut that's just like that, where it's kind of the dramatic peak of the kind of dramatic peak of the prequel trilogy. Clearly, Lucas is so uncomfortable with it, he has to throw CGI nonsense at the screen for a few minutes.
All right. Well, then let's get to it. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking Revenge of the Sith, the 2005 sequel, directed by George Lucas. We've talked already about the movies he has and has not directed.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie is the high watermark on Rotten Tomatoes, Tom, which doesn't bode well for the two of us, but 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. This one comes under budget, under the 115, all the way down to $113 million. Opening weekend, 108.3 in the USA, 880.2 million, and in the world, 868.3 million. That's weird, isn't it?
Which part?
Oh, wait, did I say 800? 380 million.
Oh.
I think I said 800. I couldn't read my own writing. To have 880 million in the USA and then 868 world, that doesn't make any sense. So 360 or 380 in the USA, 868.3 in the world.
Yeah.
And
I feel like,
one nomination for makeup.
For makeup? Okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, well, how much
There's
of
one
that,
moment.
How much of that makeup is real, though?
I don't know, but there's one
Looks-
moment in this. We'll
looks
talk about
phenomenal.
it later, but
The crispy Anakin looks phenomenal.
mhm.
It looks like it. I mean, when I doubt
Crispy
we're
Anakin.
gonna get there on this episode. We're not gonna get there on this
Crispy Anakin.
episode. But I always remember thinking, that's phenomenal body horror.
Mhm. I agree.
Probably shouldn't be in this movie, but I appreciate it wherever I find it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, and it's interesting. I sort of understand why the rating is higher than the other two, because this, more than either of the other two movies, poses itself as a far more serious and worthy movie.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But you scratch the surface, and this is the silliest movie of the bunch by a mile. and that's in comparison to
You
the
don't have to
Phantom
go
Menace.
too deep to find that out. Yeah.
But Phantom Menace is self-consciously marketed as a kids movie,
Mm-hmm.
as a movie for underage audiences. Attack of the Clones, I think, is sort of is kind of goofy, swashbuckler kind of entertainment. This, poses
Mixed
itself
with
as,
some genre
yeah,
choices, the romance and the
but potboiler
noir.
stuff, really, like not to be the kind of movie you shouldn't take too seriously. This movie is trying to get you to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
How it does that with General Grievous in the middle of it is
Hard to
I don't
fathom,
understand.
But it does seem to position itself as it seems like this is the Lucas version of Return of the King. He's like, you're gonna give me a nomination, right? We're going for Best Picture here.
Makes me really sad to think he might have thought that was a possibility.
I know.
I mean, he's never going to get recognition from the Academy because he made an enemy of them.
They've been fighting for for so many decades.
But it'd be interesting to see how they would treat him as an artist. Were they not at loggerheads?
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of wonder whether they would have, given him a few nods here and there, like the kind of like they did with everyone else in his generation, who hadn't won an Oscar yet, like Scorsese, and and on the acting side, like Pacino, and give them their Oscars for their worst movies, sort of kind of thing. Worst movies yet. They're both still going. Strong is not the word, but they're both still going weak.
Well, let's talk scroll. Because my first note is war! ! We can't even get fucking complete sentences anymore.
The scroll has gone in the space of this prequel trilogy. It's gone from one extreme to another, from long-winded verbiage about taxation and trade to one-word exclamations. We have run the gamut of language.
Oh fuck!
Yeah, it's kind of.
Let's really.
I wish a more pulpier movie kind of came after it, because I feel like I would be into it.
Yeah.
If, I wish that was a signpost of what
this scroll does not match the movie we watch. You're right. I also want to. It's fun. I got to tell you.
Okay.
So I listened to this movie with the commentary on this one.
I thought you meant you just listened to it, like, without watching anything on screen.
Okay, well, no. So here's the funniest part about that. One, the very first words you're going to hear are from George Lucas, who just flat out says, yeah, these movies, they're really more visual than anything else. You can't really get literary with them. The words, like, he basically is saying the words don't matter. It's all visuals.
Yeah.
And then the scroll starts. And I don't remember who the hell was talking, but one of them
Again,
says...
that classic George Lucas self-contradiction of...
Yeah.
He's the one who chose to make this a verbal, on-screen text.
Yeah, right.
You could have done this as a voiceover if that's what... If you don't want to do literary, but
if you don't want to do anything literary.
Yeah.
The best part was this line, there are heroes on both sides.
So before, one tiny thing before that, they're trying to fake you out into believing that Dooku is going to be the villain of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, because they mention him high up in the
in the scroll, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to, I appreciate, like, we'll talk about my feelings about losing Christopher Lee so early in the movie, but it's a genuine fake out that I quite appreciate.
Okay.
Like it is sort of like it's established from the very beginning of the movie, and is very surprising when it happens. Whether it was the right choice or not, I will probably have a different opinion. But I enjoy the fake out of it.
I don't mind telling you, it never came as too much of a surprise to me. Because you got to have only two. So, got to kill that guy.
Well, yeah, but you've got another, hour and 10 minutes before he sort of signs on to the
role.
To Sith Incorporated.
To his villainy. Yeah.
So,
it's true.
That could have all been good Christopher Lee time. Anyway.
You're not wrong.
But yes, go on. There are heroes on both sides. Continue.
There are heroes on both sides. One of my favorite things listening to that commentary was, I don't remember who it was, but he said, I really had a lot of arguments with George about this line. There are heroes on both sides. Why would that be in there? Heroes on both sides? So the Palpatine side, there are heroes? Is that what you're saying? And then he said, and George went into a really lengthy explanation about everything until I finally said, okay, but I really didn't understand it. So, yeah, it's in there. And that's how it was left.
It's interesting.
George just kept talking until I shut up, and then I don't know why it's there.
I mean, that's what he does to his creative collaborators, right? He just wears them down. But so I have two contrasting feelings about this line.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like it for what it is. I think it's just they're just trying to say this is more complicated than it looks from the outside, right? And
Sure.
Palpatine's in charge of both armies, so there's no
Right.
moral superiority here. It just hasn't dated well post the presidency of Donald Trump, where he said there are good people on both sides, in reference
That's right.
to political protesters and Nazis.
And Nazis, yeah.
So that's what I think about now when I see that line. But in and of itself, I kind of like the ambiguity of it.
Okay.
I think I see what he's getting at, because there is this, the separatists are not necessarily villains.
Mm-hmm.
They're being orchestrated by a villain, but they have a legitimate point of view. Turns out they're right, by the way. It was time to get out of the Republic before it became an empire. So
Yeah, they're not.
I think they're
weren't
pretty
wrong.
vindicated by the ending of this film. So, and they mention the droid leader. Do they say Grievous? Do they mention?
They do. They say droid leader General Grievous, and I wrote down like we know him.
Like we know him. Also, I don't know when they wrote this scroll whether they knew he was going to be a robot or a man at this point, because
'cause
it's
he's
very
both.
ambiguous. Well, I mean, in the making of documentary, and I think I talked about this briefly on our ranking episode, that they show you the design process of General Grievous, and just how chaotic and random it is as to what design they end up going with.
Mm.
It feels like a lot of this movie is sort of last minute game day decisions about really important stylistic choices. And I think we'll get into it, but I think they hugely missed the mark with General Grievous. And I don't know at what point Gary Oldman backed out of doing the voice for Grievous, but he was announced as to be the voice of General Grievous, and ended up being the sound editor filling in for him. So I don't know if he backed out because he knew what it was turning into. I don't know. This is the least thought through aspect of this movie. Everything relating to General Grievous, I think.
Is
But
the
anyway,
consensus is fan consensus that he's garbage, or I thought fans liked General Grievous.
there's not enough hatred of General Grievous out there for my liking.
Okay, fine.
But I don't think he's generally. I think it's split. I think it's a hung jury.
Okay.
But I don't understand why anyone would think he was the biggest sort of visual atrocity to ever stumble around a screen. Anyway, we're still talking. We're not. Anyway, that was a tangent, because at this point he's just being mentioned. We haven't seen him in action.
True. Let's wait.
This is the first time that I read one of these opening crawls and thought, how much does the person writing this in universe, the person writing these scrolls, know about what's going on? Because it's written as if even the person writing these scrolls doesn't know Palpatine is the big baddie.
Yeah, it doesn't know exactly what's been happening.
Like, I always assumed that this was an omniscient narrator who could see everything. But reading this scroll, I'm like, this guy doesn't know what's really going on.
That's fantastic.
This is a lot of naive journalism. It's like someone who did an interview with Bill Cosby back in the day, and now they're reading it back, going, "God, I should have seen.
Fuck.
I should have
Boy,
seen
did
it."
I really.
That
I really missed the mark.
That thing where he talked about drugging women, I really should have
That
seen
thing
it.
where he said Spanish fly is great.
You've seen that documentary too.
Yeah.
I was going to say Larry King didn't pick up on it, but I'm sure there's a few, genocide level atrocities that Larry King hasn't picked up on over the years.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
If you ever get a chance to see his interview with Jerry Seinfeld post Seinfeld going off the air, asking him about Larry King asking him about the circumstances of how Seinfeld went off the air. And it was like, it's like, so did they cancel you, or just like, no, It was the biggest show on television. Where we decided to like. So why don't you know anything about the person you're interviewing?
I just go in blind.
Yeah. Oh, the people who say that are just hilarious. I think it's sort of like
So great.
What? Not doing your job?
I like to fly by the seat of my pants.
It's like Jiminy Glick logic. Anyway.
These are my 2 children, Matthew and Modine.
4 children: Matthew, Morgan, Mason, and Modine.
All right, back on track, please.
Back on track.
Do you have anything more to say about this scroll before we move on?
Well, only the last paragraph is basically the same as in Phantom Menace. Because it's 2 Jedi Knights on a...
Yeah, right.
On a... Well, not quite a dip... I guess... Is it a dip?
This is not a diplomatic mission, but they're going to rescue.
Yeah. So, I thought that was interesting because it's sort of looping back to the beginning of Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time that we're kind of looping back to Return of the Jedi in the bigger scheme of the series.
Mm-hmm. Because we're going to start with a fight.
Well, we get the traditional pan. Well, it's like you
pan
said.
Down.
It's either going to be a pan down or a pan up, and it's a pan down. But we're immediately blinded by light, which I thought was an interesting stylistic choice. Blinded. It was like, you do know that it's dark in movie theaters, right? And and we're on top of a spaceship rather than we always said there's got to be some kind of an inversion of the openings of the original trilogy, and here it's that we're on top of a spaceship rather than underneath the hull of it.
Right.
And I wonder whether they were waiting for the effects to be good enough to do this for it to look credible, but I don't know, or whether they were just like, what can we do now? We've kind of we've taken this shot from every possible angle.
Right, and we want to start with heart-pumping action, so two flyers are going to be cruising past camera lens.
I love
but
that
I gotta
transition.
tell you, me too. There's
a
second transition too. I have that note about the drum beats. The ships pass through, and then there's this moment where the camera almost looks like it's attached itself to those 2 ships to start following them. And that transition's really cool looking.
Yeah.
Now, I think they get a little too cute with, trying to do a Martin Scorsese Goodfellas walk through the restaurant comparatively with 2 ships cruising past other ships.
One droid goes one way, one droid goes the other.
Goes the other. So once we do some flips and some twirls, then they're going to go, down below that ship, and you see that there's a huge war, and then we get really, really cutesy with it in a way where I think you should have cut your losses. You had me, and now you've lost me.
Yeah, all you really need is those couple of transitions. I love that it starts in media res, that we're like again like the original Star Wars. We're in the weeds of the battle. And then everything you were saying about it trying to, this experiential aesthetic, the camera being positioned as one of the ships in flight,
right?
I think is a really innovative way to do the dogfight in a way we've not seen it filmed before in this series. We didn't see the Death Star run from this angle. So, and then it does something again that I think harkens back to Hitchcock and Psycho, and he does this a couple of times in the movie. We go from the master shot and we draw into the individual. Yeah. And that, up to that point, I think this movie's kind of firing on all cylinders.
I agree.
Admittedly, we're about a minute into the movie, but
if we haven't been here
long.
But
as you said, it gets very cute very quickly, and it's just...
Well, by the time we get to, I forget what the names are. What are the names of the little bots that crawl over a ship?
Vulture droids, I think.
Vulture droids.
Half ashamed to know that, but...
By the time we get to vulture droids...
Yeah.
The narrative of what's happening is happening for so long that these very fast ships would have been past all the other ships. They'd be on the other side of the fucking planet, but they're just flying in a straight line forever.
Yeah.
While they can, get cutesy, and it just kind of... It wears on me.
What wears on me is how busy and kinetic it stays.
Mm-hmm.
After that really nice transition from the opening shot, it kind of stays busy and with busy and kinetic for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah,
like relentlessly so.
Relentlessly, and
yet it feels long. It still feels long. It feels like the scene's going on far too long.
It does.
So it's
That's
worst
the problem.
of both. It's the worst
Right.
of both worlds. Like, it's going too fast and too slow simultaneously.
And can I ask you something else since we're
Yeah.
here? Because there are moments where Obi-Wan and Anakin are going to radio to the clones,
Yes.
and you see the clones in their ships, and they don't even have real helmets on, Tom. There's so many
Well,
of those characters.
Otherwise, Tamara Morrison's face wouldn't be in the movie.
Yeah, but can't you get them a real helmet? Why does it have to be a CGI helmet?
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Well, yeah. That's okay. Yeah, that's a wrong choice once again.
Every time they do it a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
When Obi-Wan goes to the rock planet, and whenever you see his face, he is wearing a CGI suit. I don't know. It drives me crazy.
It's kind of this picking up at this point is kind of interesting, and I guess Dave Filoni's been working back from this point over the past however many years, so we can.
You want to know the funniest part about this? Like how? So it's another commentary moment. Those guys that had been working on this for like 6 months to a year, they said George came in and just changed his mind. He just wanted to start over and do something else. And so all that work was thrown out the door, and they just had to start over.
Wow. No, that doesn't surprise me at all.
It's crazy.
And, our only kind of continuity here is Anakin and Obi-Wan. They've got new haircuts.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of new droids, like the Vulture droids.
Right.
We now see the clones.
We've got a bigger beard for Obi-Wan.
Right. I will talk about that choice to make him look exactly like Alec Guinness at the beginning of Star Wars. They clearly didn't anticipate there being an interim TV show. And then, we see the clones' faces as well, which is is interesting. And to me, dramatically, I understand the point they're making, and they're like, well, how are we going to use Tamara Morrison now if he's, we chopped his head off in the last movie. But dramatically, it doesn't make sense, because if that means that Obi-Wan is kind of looking into the eyes of Jango Fett at all times.
Always, yeah.
And he's still not suspicious about how these clones originated.
Right.
After years of working with these clones and seeing their faces every day, he'd just be like, we really should look into how these clones were originally made.
That
because
bad
they have
guy
the
that
face,
Mace Windu...
They have the face of the villain from the last movie.
The bad guy that was working with Count Dooku, that Mace Windu had to lightsaber his head off.
Yeah.
He's the person I'm seeing everywhere, and I'm not suspicious at all.
I wonder whether there's a parallel to Return of the Jedi here, because...
Well, they feel very similar in the sense that it's a self-contained kind of mini-movie.
Yeah, kind of self-contained TV episode length sequence to start the movie. And I guess the big similarity between the two is that they don't cut away to anything else. So it's like a self-standing sequence in the film. We're not cutting away to a parallel storyline. So I don't know. I some reason I follow the logic of why they did. I mean, I think we complained about why does the Jabba's palace sequence have to be like 25 minutes long, really, in narrative terms. But I think they get away with it there, and they don't necessarily here.
Well, I mean, directly speaking to what we had already said, though, it already feels like it's dragging. It's going on for too long.
And is it me who thinks that the droids are getting more killable and more comedic in tone?
No, you're right.
But again, this is supposed to be a serious movie. Like, in Phantom
yeah,
Menace, you go, well, it's goofy, but the whole movie is goofy. Here, I'm going, why do we have the goofiest version of these droids now in this supposedly serious movie?
I got something else I got to tell you.
Oh, no.
Because I told you that you had convinced me about R2-D2 being in this prequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of backed off
both times
any reservations I had about that. But now I want to reintroduce my Venom because pairing R2-D2 with Darth Vader, I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't make
like that
sense
one
on
bit.
any level, does it?
No.
It's not a good pairing, and it makes no narrative sense.
Yeah, it's gross.
Timeline. Yeah. And everything they do with R2 in this opening sequence, I think, is a kind of mistake, really.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of they're trying to. Again, it's the sort of double down of we got to see him fly again because Lucas is not going to admit that just because you didn't like it that it still happened. He's going to remind you of that.
Yeah,
you're right. He doesn't belong as Anakin's sidekick.
Partner. Yeah, it
retrospectively
it grains against everything I like about Star Wars. Yes. I just don't. It's a terrible partnership.
And they're really clunky how they try to. I think they're trying to make it better that Obi-Wan doesn't recognize R2 or says he. I mean, he's a big, he's just Galaxy's biggest liar. But he says he doesn't recognize R2-D2 or says, I don't seem to remember owning a droid.
Exactly.
He says, hello, my little friend, but there's no sense at that point that he's supposed to recognize him. And I think they think it's making it better by Obi-Wan keeping his distance from R2. Mm-hmm. But that I think that R2 would stand out more in Obi-Wan's memory because there was that little fucking droid as well that was always hanging around. And he's going, that's you, isn't it? Like, yeah. I think that what they're writing it in to go like, oh well, Obi-Wan never really interacted with the droids, and he has more droid racism in these scenes as well,
but he does interact with R2 in this opening scene.
But he's sort of skeptical of him, and that's what I think. I think they wrote that in so that it's more convincing that he forgot about R2-D2's existence. But I think, conversely, it would stand out more in his memory because he doesn't like R2, and that's why he would remember him. But anyway, it's a weird. There's a lot of weird choices in these in this. I would say opening movie. I don't know what you call it. Episode.
Yeah.
Episode 3.1. I don't know what you want to call it. And it's just a greatest hits parade of all the battle droids we've seen.
Yeah, for sure.
With a couple of new droids thrown in, which is what you do with greatest hits albums, isn't it? You have all the known songs, and there's a couple of shitty new tracks there at the beginning of each side of the album.
The ones you skip.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of, again, Obi-Wan is still 20 years away from the character that we find in the opening of Star Wars. George Lucas doesn't want to do any more Star Wars, so he wants to bring that character right up with what we see in OG Star Wars. So again, he's too early for Obi-Wan to be acting like an old man.
No, yeah, for sure.
But that's the whole shtick of this scene, is that he's out of breath and he's behind the 8-ball. And he's losing his faculties, but he's still supposed to be he's still looks like a very young man. Mm-hmm. They've just given him the haircut and beard of an old man. He's still even now he looks like he's decades away.
He looks right now like he did in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically,
doesn't look like any time has passed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because the elevator scene in Clones gets all the heat for the, interminable exchanges between Anakin and Obi-Wan about their past adventures. I think it's in this scene that they're forcing the chemistry way too hard.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to turn them into like a buddy cop.
Like Riggs and Murtaugh.
Yeah. And I think that's the worst crime, is that they try and force it too hard. And it would just have been dramatically better to just assume that they've got a rapport at this point and not continually comment on the rapport that they have and why they have it.
Yeah. You want to know, as I agree with you, and as bad as the forced rapport is in the elevator, it could have been worse, because I saw an extra scene where they cut up all the battle droids, and then each of them successively say Roger, so that together they say Roger, Roger.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Also, again,
I've never seen anything that looked so forced.
And I think this part of this scene / movie / episode is calling back to the beginning of the Phantom Menace. It's like Anakin's taken the Obi-Wan role, and now Obi-Wan is recognizably the Qui-Gon in the relationship. They have them, like, once again, lightsabers through metal surfaces and Jedi jumping.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same scenario, right? As well as, like, they enter into at the beginning of Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And it's also a trap.
But they actually see the bad guys. Yeah. And they know it so well that they're just, he flat out says, let's spring the trap.
Yes.
Let's get into some trouble.
Yeah, this it's like I don't know if they're thinking of this, but it's like from Russia with Love, both the novel and the film. That Bond knowingly walks into a trap just to see what's behind the trap, who's running the. So I wonder if they're thinking about that.
There's also a weird thing in this scene, and then later on in the movie. I never can tell what the fuck is in a Jedi's mind as to how many, say, foe or robots are too many. Because they'll willingly give themselves up at times, and other times they just say, "Well, fuck it, let's you know what I mean? Let's start some shit."
That's the problem with them being so killable, and like slicing through them with butter. Like, why couldn't they do that with 1,000 droids?
Yeah.
I love the reveal. One of my favorite moments of the film is the reveal of Palpatine in the chair.
You like that?
It's such a camp moment, and I mean, obviously the allusion to Return of the Jedi, and how that the same kind of chair, and it's just it's sort of like a camp moment that for once is sort of playing on the idea that we all know that he's the Emperor, but no one's saying it. And just making that as absurd as possible. It's like, he's supposed to be a prisoner in this chair, and he's clearly the one running the show. Like, it made it so obvious. It's absurd and funny. And I just love it. And I love his little kind of, his non-verbal punctuations to the fight.
Yeah, me too.
As well.
Yeah, I like it.
I don't know if it's the best decision to begin with a rematch from the end of the last film, especially when you're watching these movies back to back where I have. It's been a few years off screen, and I guess on screen as well. But in terms of us as viewers, if you're watching these back to back, it's been a few minutes.
Yeah,
Since there's sort of like, there's a real sense of, this is the rematch. It's like, Rocky 2 doesn't begin with the rematch between Apollo Creed and Rocky, right?
Let's just get that nasty business of the fight out of the way so we can get to the rest of our movie. Rocky doesn't say that.
I mean, unless you're Sylvester Stallone re-editing your own films, that's the only way that happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then Obi-Wan has a ridiculous line, which is, "Sith Lords are our speciality." Which is a weird thing to say when you have a
I love how he delivers it, though. It's so fucking. It's so ridiculous, but
he is,
and not to mention patently untrue, because they got a 50%
success rate.
Yeah,
which retrospectively turns out to be 0 success rate. They don't know it at this point, but there's a Darth Maul with spider legs knocking about somewhere.
Right.
So yeah, but I mean, I think like that's again they're trying to give the idea that Obi-Wan has become overconfident.
I guess, but I think it's one of the problems for the movie too, and it's this moment, and then there's also moments between Anakin and Padme, where so much has happened between the characters off screen
Yeah.
that the audience is left behind, and that's not a great thing.
True.
It doesn't, that's hard. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to, it doesn't jive with what's going on in your canon head.
It's too early
from the last movie you've seen. Yeah, it's too early. It causes all kinds of problems.
It does. I mean, they just again, it's narrative convenience, isn't it? Because he has to be unconscious when Anakin tips over into the dark side again.
To the dark side, right?
I like it when it happens incrementally. But from this point onwards, they just go back and forth between him being a hero and a villain, and it's like this should have been really their launch pad into Vader. And there's a lot of back and forth in between that doesn't really make sense on a psychological
Well, I think you mentioned the hero part of it in one of our last episodes, right? Like they set him up to be the hero in this moment, and that the counterbalance is off compared to where he was, murdering with the women and the children in our last film. The children.
Yes, exactly. Let us never forget the women and the children. And I was thinking about this the other day. There's a way to do it where he comes back from the Clone Wars as the hero, but that experience has turned him into a villain, because that's what Macbeth is essentially. Right? That's the starting point. Yeah. He comes back from the war, and he's I think it's said various times he's bloody minded,
bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's like a springboard, and I think they could have done it that he's just like, so let's kind of continue this warlike approach to politics, and I'll go out and kill these people. It's like it shouldn't have been any conflict about him killing the Trade Federation, board the way he does. It should have just been like, this is how you do politics, right? Based on everything he said in the press film about how fascism is the way to do it.
Yeah.
But there's too much. But there's too much back and forth, and the movie wants him to stay a hero for too long. For it to make sense. Well, this is. I mean, we have a replay of Dooku versus Anakin, which is also because because Palpatine's there watching from the same chair. It's also Vader and Luke in Jedi.
Sure.
It's the same setup, right? That's what was, as far as we can tell, that was Palpatine's plan. He wanted Luke to kill Vader, and then Luke would become his apprentice. And then Vader wanted Luke to kill the Emperor,
and they could rule together.
I don't know where Dooku fits into this, because he's a 90-year-old apprentice. So it's really funny. I saw a clip the other day of Christopher Lee talking about filming his fight scenes in Attack of the Clones, and he was just like, I can move my arms very fast, but the knees are not what they were. And I just sort of thinking, why is this guy being cast as anyone's apprentice?
But here's the thing. What's so funny is he looks so fucking elegant.
Oh,
as like a 90-year-old man twirling around with swords. I mean,
even the digital version of him is semi-elegant.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny given what they did with Peter Cushing.
You mean his front flip?
When he does his jump down, and it's an entirely digital Dooku.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, Peter Cushing would be entirely digitalized a few years later.
Later on in this movie, he's going to be fully digitalized.
Isn't that just makeup? Anyway, we'll get there. We're a good
maybe I don't know.
We're a good couple of episodes away from that.
Yeah.
So obviously, I have mixed feelings about losing Christopher Lee at this point. I like the fake out element. It kind of came I remember it coming as a genuine surprise to me, and also within the narrative logic of the movie. I like that they send him off with a Wicker Man reference with the cross lightsabers,
right?
Beheading, which I think is a lovely touch. But it's a waste. You've got him.
Well, yeah, you're certainly
You're
getting
not replacing
rid of...
him with anything of the same
No,
standard, so it's a problem. I also love the look on his face when the Emperor orders Anakin to kill him.
Oh, I do like that. Yeah, I do too.
Some good screen act. I mean, it's not breaking news, is it? Christopher Lee is a good screen actor, but this is a man who knows his craft well enough to do a kind of reaction shot like that.
What I like about it is I love that he makes it so good, but the character should not be surprised at all.
Yeah, and then that goes back to what I was saying in the last film. Like, I don't know what Dooku knows and doesn't know.
That's true.
And this complicates it further. I like the moment; it's more dramatic this way.
Yeah.
But if anything, it makes it more unwieldy in terms of the plot that he wouldn't.
The look
see
on
this
his
coming.
face, though, me, but I'm your loyal servant.
Right. And then we're into the third act of this mini movie. At this point, and it's all about Grievous from this point onwards.
We get to the Grievous of it all,
who's our new it's the gauntlet has been handed
He's
to our
gonna
surrogate
be
villain,
the surrogate baddie, right?
But he's also kind of like he has his own kind. So there's some kind of Jedi-like droid with the one that has the staff. We saw them in the Clone Wars as well.
Yeah,
it's a
right.
droid we haven't seen before, and it's especially confusing because without knowing for sure, I suspect this was once the kind of design prototype of Grievous, and they were like, "No, we've changed what Grievous is, but we can keep these as his guards or something."
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of I don't know. I think it's like a runway to Grievous, these droids, but it because they have Jedi skills like he does, which means you can't slice through them quite as quickly. And then we're into the sort of crash landing, which it dramatically is the crux of the set piece. Although you could lose everything after Dooku dies and nothing would change in the story either.
No.
So really, all this crash landing is sort of an artificial.
No, it feels like the end of, I don't know, an Emergency 51 episode, or Airport or something. One of those movies.
It's so funny. It's so funny you say that, because one of the things I noticed, which seems to me ridiculous for such an expensive movie, we keep going back to the same cutaway of R2-D2 and the Emperor.
Right. Yeah.
Stood in the cockpit. It's like you're repeating shots in Revenge of the Sith. This is what you do when you got to make a movie 75 minutes long so you can release it. It's just crazy to me that there would that kind of oversight.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah,
but it all I mean, I guess we forgot to mention that in the middle of all of this, Grievous is escaped.
Of course. Again, like I've said, I don't know how many times I've said this, but they should have flipped it. Should have had Grievous be, even though he's just been introduced to him, Grievous should have been the one who died.
Kill Grievous, keep Dooku.
Keep Dooku. But then there's no point in introducing Grievous at that point, but yeah. I'm still in denial at this point, narratively, that he is going to be our villain for the rest of the movie. Because I take one look at him and I go, how could we have ended up with this? That's our villain. It seems like something's gone wrong.
So, some sort of android robot with human organs.
There was an
emphysema.
Administrative accident, and somehow General Grievous is the villain for the movie. Which, from everything that collectively we've observed about behind the scenes at Lucasfilm for this film, is entirely possible.
Totally possible, absolutely.
And so they crash land successfully.
That ends the front portion, the mini movie of the movie,
and we begin the non-battle part of the movie.
Right.
So I either think they were going for Jabba's palace type sequence.
That's how it feels narratively. It feels as though they're trying to match.
Also, Lucasfilm is
the style of that movie.
Lucasfilm is Indiana Jones, so it could have been going for like a Indiana Jones style pre-title sequence.
Maybe.
But it takes a big chunk off the movie.
Yeah.
And then we're straight into the spaceships taking off and landing on
Plenty of that.
Plenty of that. We got it.
But we also get some of
we've
that.
We've gone from one kind of space filler to another.
Right after we crash land, we get a little more of that history between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and this is how many times he's saved his life and what counts and doesn't count. I always think I'd like to see that movie.
Yeah. And it's terrible dialogue, and again the worst in the prequel trilogy, despite what people have said about the dialogue in the other movies. This is far worse for me. So it really helps that Ewan McGregor is at his most comfortable. He's really grown into the part.
Totally.
And it's evident from these opening scenes, which would have been interminable otherwise. If he was Obi-Wan from Phantom Menace, my God, can you imagine how hard it would have been to get through these scenes?
How difficult.
Yeah. And go on.
I was gonna say, we've gotten through the first battle. Maybe we should just take a break.
All right, sounds good.
All right,
that's half the battle.
Then that's what we'll do.
Many things are half the battle.
Many things are half the battle. I'm concerned about what's all the battle.
There you go. A little bit of.
Let's take the fight to them.
Yeah, a little bit of good movie dialogue there for antidote to what we're talking about.
All right, everybody. We'll be back. We won't be talking about the Untouchables.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the first part, or first half, of Revenge of the Sith. The 2005 sequel.
The first quarter of the first half.
Yeah, there you go. And we just got done with the major set piece.
The centerpiece of the movie is over.
Yeah.
25 minutes in.
And then from here on, we just have to know about how these two are going to become who they're going to become and how many windows Padme can look out.
It's true. And this is where we realize that it's the nail in the coffin for Jar Jar Binks, really. This scene where they arrive back, and he's now just a background character.
He's not going to say shit.
He's got one line. He doesn't get a close-up seen from behind.
Right. He's
like that out-of-focus actor in Deconstructing Harry that Robin Williams plays. But, like in Phantom Menace, he was the focal point and one of the major speaking parts. So. And there's a kind of moment where you sort of see the droids overtake Jar Jar as the sidekicks.
Yeah, right.
So maybe Lucas is sort of like ushering out one kind of sidekick and ushering in another.
A new one.
Yeah. And we're back to the pure melodrama that we saw in parts of the last movie with...
We'll see it right away.
The secret marriage and, the pregnancy.
Although...
It's romance novella stuff.
But not much of a secret either. I mean, she's just right behind one of those pillars.
Yeah. They really wrote themselves into a corner here.
narratively, it never comes up.
No.
The fact
That's
that
right.
these two are secretly
It's
married.
like
It
like that
never mattered.
shape-shifting alien
Yeah.
in the beginning of Attack of the Clones. It's like it makes no difference. To
Does
the
not
scene.
make a lick of difference.
Then we cut away to Grievous arriving slowly on a planet
Mm-hmm.
with a lengthy landing sequence.
And a
now
lengthy robotic walkout
Oh
of
man!
his ship.
And we see a the Emperor or the Darth Sidious, I guess at this point, hologram. It's like the worst kept secret in the trilogy because you can see his full face underneath that hood. No.
Yeah.
So the movie's kind of toying with us in that respect. It's sort of like, are there any of you who haven't figured it out yet? And then we do another opening of Psycho zoom from the streets of Coruscant to the bedroom of, I guess, Padme. I guess Anakin doesn't live there. Where did Jedis live?
I don't know.
Do they live in the temple?
It's never stated.
It isn't, is it? Do you have to bunk with...
But he's staying overnights. They've got to...
Sure, yeah, because he wakes up from a nightmare. Yeah, you're right. But he doesn't live there.
I don't know.
Because he can't, because then they'd know that they were married.
But I remember thinking when he's having his nightmare, I remember thinking, not a lot of care taken to keep this secret.
I guess the only time we've seen... No, a couple of times... Well, 3. So we've seen, like, Jedi hermits and their homes.
Sure.
But we've never, like, seen, I don't know if there's, like, a Jedi... Like a military base, kind of like a series of high-rise apartments that the Jedis are in. Jedi condos.
Just making ravioli.
Why? I don't know why that image came to your mind, but it's the perfect image. Just like Jack Lemmon in the apartment,
exactly.
Sipping spaghetti with a tennis racket. Lightsabering, like
the toast, the like bread and shit.
It's like, like those people who are so cool they could like make tortillas on the grill.
Yeah.
Not on the grill, on like the hot plates. They can just do it freestyle, like loose. There's all these Jedis who are like putting tortillas on the lightsaber and then quickly flipping them over.
I can slice it and toast it all at the same time.
There's a Disney Plus show for you right there.
Mm-hmm.
You could even combine it with the new Frasier reboot. It's like Frasier's roommate, instead of Nicholas Lyndhurst from Only Fools and Horses, is a Jedi. A Jedi in training.
Oh, fuck.
Now, the Love is Blind dialogue, easily the worst in this trilogy.
I have it down here.
A trilogy notable for bad dialogue, much worse than anything in Attack of the Clones.
They also have things like, because I'm in love. No, because I'm so in love with you.
Yeah.
And these poor actors, because...
It's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no bigger hill to climb, but I also feel like both Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen have... Like, they've gotten to a place where they could be asked to do more. They seem much more natural in this movie, but they're not given anything to do together. Poor Natalie Portman is just...
She's given nothing to do, yeah.
Nothing to do, and...
She went from an action heroine to, a pregnant housewife.
Right. And in the last movie, you spoke at length about... Well, we both have about the murdering of the women and the children, and what a turn towards Darth Vader that
Never
is.
Never forget.
And then they kind of back it up by continually trying to make him the hero again in this movie. But there's a turn that doesn't happen till, in the last part of this movie, where she's finally realizes what he has become and turns away from him. But what if that's the catalyst? What if that's introduced way sooner? What if she's the one that says, these ideas that you have are the wrong ideas, and I'm taking our child and I'm going, and that anger is what transforms him. That she would
solve a lot of timeline problems as well.
Oh man, it seems like such an obvious answer. I lament it whenever I watch this movie.
The children would remember their mother, and then that whole scene in Jedi
would make sense.
Leia's memories of her mother would make more sense.
Well, also if she didn't die.
Well, that's really all she has to do in the movie is get pregnant and die.
Right.
Give birth and die, So,
But Leia says she died when I was very young. And this is really young.
Yeah.
So young. Minutes old.
Just a glint in Anakin's red eye.
Mm-hmm. And I've got more to say about how they could have handled that, but I'll save it till the next episode.
For sure, yeah. Well, but the seeds of it are here. There's that, we talked about this before, the remnants of an Othello-like love triangle.
Yeah.
With Obi-Wan.
And I think they could have
clearly
played
left
that
over
up
from
more.
an earlier draft.
Yeah.
Because there's like a power struggle between the three of them
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make any sense unless Obi-Wan is romantically interested in Padme or vice versa.
Right.
And they've also, I think, having established the fact that he gets these nightmares in the last movie,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, and I feel like this is what you're speaking to, it's written as if his trauma went away and then came back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Instead of like a slow, steady climb of his fear
Mm-hmm.
about loss and death, which is psychologically plausible given the life he's had.
Sure.
And having come back from war, what happened to his mother. But they don't track any of that. Again, it just feels like, I'm back home. I guess the nightmares have started again.
Now, let me ask you this. What do you think of us seeing the nightmares for the first time?
It darkens the movie significantly. It's a what I call a Temple of Doom move. It's like when you do this is a little bit like Crispy Anakin. It's like once you do this, or the Jedi Temple children slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't really come back.
You can't
from
go
this
back, right?
In a family friendly movie. I think it's a bold, certainly a bold choice,
Right.
and stylistically too. You don't have any precedent.
Well, I
for
was even just thinking in juxtaposition to everything that's ever happened in any Star Wars movie previous.
Yeah.
Luke's on Dagobah, and he just says Han, Leia. And then Yoda tells him he's been seeing the future. This is the first time.
Well, the cave.
This is the first
I
time that
suppose, on
Lucas
Dagobah.
is. That's different, though. I think that's
Well,
not.
But if you're looking for precedent, that's as close as you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
But then the sequels will have all kinds of kind of fantasy sequences.
Yeah. Anyway, I just say
hopefully the whole of Rise of Skywalker was a dream, but I'm still waiting for that confirmation.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know.
But anyway, I was just curious.
It's all Claude's dream.
Because I kind of like I don't mind that it's hard to see.
The future?
Yeah. I think.
Always in motion it is.
Yeah. And I kind of like I just wish they did more with it, because once you see her and he thinks, oh, I'm in danger, or she's in danger, and then in the next time he actually sees Obi-Wan there. That's alarming for him. So I wish that played more into the triangle that you're talking about, and it just doesn't,
Well, or establish that's a topic of jealousy in their lives, and also some confirmation that this is this a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, in that everything he does in order to prevent this makes this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it literally just Palpatine sending, beaming
yeah
scary visions into his mind? Because the only conversation that they've had in this movie, we know he knows about his nightmares.
Yeah.
Because they
through bad,
and he's told him about the slaughtering of the women and the children.
Through bad dialogue, we're gonna get remember you told me about the women and the children.
That's just great. And it doesn't make any sense, because as if that would make you feel better about having just murdered someone. It's no, it's fine. It's just like when you murdered those women and children. Oops.
Did I say that out loud?
For some reason, that was supposed to make you feel better. At least this is a man this time.
Yeah.
So then we go into a scene with Yoda, scene between Anakin and Yoda, which is really the only scene that they're together alone in the whole trilogy. And I think this is sort of riffing off the scene in Empire Strikes Back between Luke and Yoda, where he's saying a lot of the same things, like, this is a turning point for you.
Right.
It can go one way or it can go another. So you get a sense of the road less traveled for Luke in this.
Yeah,
sense.
you have that, but you also, like, the dickish Jedis are back.
Oh my god, yes. I mean, Yoda's advice is
Rid
written
yourself
as
of everything you've ever fucking cared about.
Yoda's advice is kind of on the page, looks like sage wisdom.
Yeah.
But when you break it down, it's just like, it's just abuse. It's cult rhetoric.
Yeah.
This is what Jim Jones said to his followers, right? And then he goes off to talk to the Emperor again.
Well,
we see
yeah,
them in silhouettes. We get I feel like there's a silhouette in every movie. I might be wrong about this, but this in the last movie we definitely had Padme and Anakin in the last one. I know there's that poster. I don't know if there's an actual silhouette in the movie.
Right.
But this one is Vader and the Emperor, so it's like it's like sort of saying that, I don't know, like, they're the new power couple.
Yeah.
I haven't thought this through, clearly.
They're the new Brangelina.
And then we go into a Zoom meeting for Jedis.
Yeah.
Well,
this is the part. This
is something that converse to the heroes on both sides line.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that's actually kind of over since the COVID Zoom explosion.
Yeah.
Actually, this scene kind of makes more sense than it did when it was released, because it's like they're sitting in seats as holograms.
But before that, when he does meet with Palpatine or whoever, I never know what to call him anymore. He is technically Palpatine
Sheev.
still, I guess.
Just good old.
But that's the part where he tells him that he's gonna insist that he be his representative on the council. I don't think this movie draws a clear enough line for the character of Anakin. You know, there's not enough for his ambition. Like you can see that it's there.
I agree.
But it just should. It could have been so much more deliberate, and obviously,
you know what's really disappointing is that his turn to the dark side is entirely external to him, because everybody is a dick to him from all sides.
Yeah.
So
from his point of view,
a hard place. Yeah, it's like it's sort of like, who's gonna get me out of this jam? Because, and it's a shame it comes down to that, because both sides are there are villains on both sides. they're sort of like, it's never a clear choice. And well, obviously in several hours we'll get to what Mace Windu does, but he says some things that would alarm anyone.
Yeah, right.
About what's going to happen after this, and it's I think it's kind of a shame that it's all external to Anakin and his psychological development.
Yeah.
He's just a kind of pawn, really, in the middle of all this.
I guess I lament it because with just, I said this in the ranking episode, with a few tweaks, with a few choices, choosing to do just a few things in all of these movies would kind of awaken the movies from their slumber and really make them take off in a way that would be
The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
absolutely.
captivating.
Also, are you clear about what Anakin's secret mission is? Just on a writing level? A level of comprehension? I'm not clear who ordered the mission. I don't know why the people who are comfortable with him going on the mission would be, and why the people who are uncomfortable with it wouldn't be.
What I think is weird is that we were just in the temple, and they don't have this conversation with him. It's just Obi-Wan having this conversation with him. He says, "Be wary of the Emperor. By the way, we want..."
But he begins the conversation with that by saying,
"Right,
This is off the, and later on, we're going to realize that everything that happens in the Jedi Temple
is recorded
for posterity, like the Nixon White
Yeah,
House.
right.
So this is the, I don't know. I think Obi-Wan's onto something here. It's sort of like, well, we don't want
That's
this.
true.
We don't want a hologram to be made of this. So
that's why I'm telling you privately out here. All right, I'll buy that.
Like Donald Sutherland in JFK.
But it just it feels as though. I mean, I never had this conscious thought, but I could see how somebody would say, well, what the fuck's Obi-Wan up to? Maybe he's not even, maybe he doesn't have permission from the council. Maybe,
Again, I think Lucas, when he writes, he loses a sense of the character's points of view.
Mm-hmm.
They get switched around.
Yeah, right.
He forgets who thought what when. And I think this is a prime example of that. This doesn't seem like Obi-Wan. I think he accidentally wrote this as an Obi-Wan scene. I think it would make way more sense as a Mace Windu scene.
Right, exactly.
If it was Mace Windu knowing what he's going to eventually do in this
and
movie,
it would hook...
While Obi-Wan is off riding lizards.
Yeah,
he didn't give a shit
right.
about this. He just...
And it's funny, too, because if it was Mace Windu, that would be something different than we've seen before. And we know that Mace Windu has been... a little dubious about Anakin himself. He doesn't necessarily trust him. And then that would make the scene more interesting. It's like, is this a test?
I'm almost positive this was originally a Mace Windu scene.
A waste?
Changed for some unknown reason.
I think you almost said
because
Waste Windu.
Waste Windu. That's the Mad Magazine.
But it would really hook into that later scene when he tells him
that's what I was
to
just stay
here,
yeah.
And
that's why I think
if what you've said turns out to be true,
I know.
It would really, piece everything together much better.
He's already, Obi-Wan's already on his side, right?
Right.
He's already defending him to the council. But if he wins over Mace Windu, then his path as a Jedi would be much clearer because he'd be part of the hierarchy. And Palpatine can promise him that he'd be part of his political hierarchy. So it's more of a, again, more of a choice.
Yeah.
More of a clear choice for Anakin. Do I go with the good and evil version of essentially the same thing?
Mm-hmm. But in that scene, they're also... It's I already mentioned it, but they're trying to set up... They're trying to deepen the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan to set up the end of the film, because he's calling him, he's saying, goodbye, my old friend, and maybe may the Force be with you, Master. And it's like they're trying to bring them together. But all of that is based on shit that happened off screen that we didn't see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't know why they're so close. It's only tangentially that we know that.
Well, I don't think... I think it just... The context clues is fine for that.
Okay.
I think the worst part of it is when they start talking, that they start talking about it.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's Yes, I think that part of it is overdone.
Okay.
Plus, and again, you could say this about so many things, but the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, has extended the finite number of meetings that these two characters have had. Right. So when you see this, he's like, he's going to see him again when he kills him, and then he's going to see him again 10 years later, and then he's going to see him on the Death Star, and probably, according to Deborah Chow, he's going to meet him about 5 more times between those 2 meetings, so...
That'll be the whole of Obi-Wan Kenobi? The show, I mean?
Yeah. Oh, well, she's doing more, so I assume it's going to be him and Vader meeting again.
All right.
I don't know. You know how I feel about that. Missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the Zoom meeting, we're told that the Wookiees are going to play a part.
Right.
Or are playing a part in this war. So they talk about a Wookiee escort.
Yeah.
Which I think is this pops up on a hotel TV screen when you check in.
I can't decide if Wookiee Escort is a good band name or a good album title.
Yeah.
But Yoda mentions
So-
that he's had good relationship with the Wookiees.
Good relations with the Wookiees I have, yeah.
Yeah.
So more hitherto unknown connections between Legacy series characters.
Right.
I guess sort of Lucas trying to bring the original trilogy into touch with this one through the idea of Wookiees. If it had been left, and well, we'll get there, but if it had been left at that, it would have been fine. But if it had been Wookiees other than Chewbacca,
I agree. That's what I was gonna say.
I think that would have made total sense.
Just don't have Chewbacca there.
You're in a war type situation. Who are you gonna want as your allies? A planet full of bears who tear people's arms off. It's like, that's pretty good
company.
I would say there's your front line. But anyway, we don't need to get too bleak, because the best dramatic scene in the prequel trilogy is about to happen.
Where are we?
We're at the bubble opera.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I admit I don't need to see any more transparent bubbles.
I was very worried you were gonna say, "Hold me like you did on Naboo." I was gonna get the fuck out of here, Tom. What are you doing?
So we get the sort of post Fifth Element bubble opera.
I always thought of it as like the Star Wars version of Cirque du Soleil.
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
But you know what's interesting about that? They talk about that this whole thing was just going to take place in his office again. And they were like, "Oh, we're fucking always in that office. Let's go somewhere else." And they come up with this.
Good for them.
It's fucking great.
Good for them.
Yeah.
That's it's called writing, isn't it? It's like even they were fatigued with scenes taking place in offices at this point. Do you think George was like, "Hey, let's just have it in the Jedi Temple, with those"? No, George, no, we want a change of scenery. It's just it's so strange in this movie that's not really working.
Yeah.
In a trilogy that has not lived up to expectations for most people. Suddenly everything comes together in one scene.
It's really good.
And it does everything that you hope a scene from a prequel movie would do, which it's like there's an interplay of both trilogies, which is what they've been going for the whole time and really failing to do. It feels like the trilogies are united,
right.
And when we talk about the sequel trilogies, this scene even speaks to those. That's
right.
How good it is. It's really good acting, really good writing, like Godfather levels of atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a real movie.
Yeah.
But suddenly we're in like a 70s movie in the middle of all this.
I know. Well, it helps
And
that you have Ian
Lucas,
McDermott there to act his fucking the lights out,
Well, even Lucas understands the need to minimize everything around this scene.
Yeah.
We bring down the lighting, the background, the extras, the music, and the sound, which, his instinct is to amplify all of that.
Right, right.
And yet, he recognizes that this scene isn't going to work unless it's like a blank canvas around these two characters. Mm-hmm. And he resists that low-hanging fruit throughout.
Good for him.
And I think, and it's just two people talking.
Right.
It's
you don't get nearly enough of that.
Not to this.
I guess you
level.
do in this particular film. You get plenty of him talking with Padme. You get him talking with Yoda, but nothing.
This is real writing.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like a scene from a real movie. I love that he does like a sort of Drax from Moonraker style "Ladies Leave Us" at the beginning. Because he dismisses his guests, and he's so two-faced about it as well. He starts out saying, "Anakin, sit down, leave us." Mm-hmm. It's sort of like he's literally, schizophrenic. Like half of him is the Emperor. He's like that Lego head in the Lego movie that turns around, the good cop, bad cop, played by Liam Neeson. It's like that, but with Palpatine. And this was J.J. Abrams' favorite prequel scene. I remember him saying.
Oh, okay.
So, he's right. I suspect he only chose that.
I was going to say, what do you think about
that? He's right. I suspect he only said it because it gets him out of a lot of storytelling trouble. He quotes a line from this in Rise of Skywalker instead of doing backstory. It's certainly Ian McDermott's best scene in any of them.
I think in any of the movies, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And all, like, it's interesting that, you know, everything is a little bit more sophisticated than it is the rest of the movie. Even all that stuff we've been saying about the Jedi, that you don't get the sense that the screenplay or
has clued
like,
into,
totally recognize it. But in this scene,
it's there.
We have a commentary on that,
Yeah.
because he says, you know, they talk about, Anakin talks about the Sith and their extremism, and, you know, he describes them. He says, and the Jedi don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, you know, air horn time. You know, there's no comeback from that, is there?
Yeah, I mean, and not just that, but I like that he says, you know, he's so clued in to where they are right now. I love that he says, if they're not gonna, if they haven't already asked you to plot against me, they will soon. That's great.
Which is a very like, if you told me this scene was guest directed by Francis Ford Coppola, I would believe you,
right?
Because that's a very and you know, Lucas worked on The Godfather as well, as an editor, so it's a very Godfather-like line.
Yeah,
it's almost a direct quote from Michael Corleone, I think, or, you know, the way that that kind of it, just in a fantasy context, right? Because his foresight comes from the dark side of the Force, not his experience of being a crime lord. Well, I guess
maybe both. Maybe
little
both.
From column A, a little from column B. And but this is like, I love this scene, but I wish there was a not in this scene. I wouldn't change anything about this scene, except maybe the mention of midichlorians. But it's my one note, George.
Yeah.
But I wish there was another scene where it was sort of pinned down how much of this is how I guess everything to do with Darth Sidious is the same. Like, how much is he in control of the play, of the con?
Yeah, that's, you know,
because is he projecting these images into the mind and then verbally reinforcing them?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
is he going, oh, look, this guy's in a sad way, let me exploit
it
to get
right.
him to where I need to be. But we end the movie not knowing which way it went.
And it's such a simple fix too, because if you go if Anakin is confessing things to him,
yeah,
you know, he talks about visions with Yoda. Why not talk about them with Palpatine? The only other thing that doesn't really jive too well is that, you know, say in this scene, Palpatine has this story about, what's the other Darth's name that he talks about?
Darth Plagueis the Wise. Have you ever heard the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
I'm about to. When he brings up the Darth Plagueis, it's not until later in the movie where he says, you have to learn about the dark side of the Force. He finally says, what the fuck do you know about the dark side of the Force? What's going on here? You know, that's the only thing where Anakin's not cluing in yet, that this guy seems to have a lot of information about Jedi and know the ways of the Jedi without being a Jedi. You know, he's not cluing in yet.
And that's the other inadvertent problem of a scene this good in a movie this bad.
Yeah, right.
Is that it's working on a level of subtext and ambiguity,
which we've been waiting 2.5 movies for.
Right, because, you know, nothing is directly stated, but you assume that he's the apprentice who killed his master.
Right.
Although I think J.J. Abrams thinks that he was actually Darth Plagueis. But anyway, he took the opposite meaning from it. Yeah. But I understand, because it's nothing is directly stated. It's all implied, and people have really sort of teased out the possible meanings of this scene, going back to, you know, Anakin's virgin birth and how Palpatine might have been created him from, you know, using the Force, and actually his father and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I think that is because this scene is so rich. I mean, Star Wars fans can construct fan theories out of anything.
Sure.
In this case, they're right to, because it does have that depth, but only here. And it's not backed up anywhere else.
No.
And so everything else kind of everything else looks weaker in comparison.
No, yeah.
But I love the fact that he still throws in midichlorians when he doesn't need to, just to double down on something that is like one of the least liked mythology editions. He just can't let go.
He refuses.
Yeah, and this is the bit where they like after the scene ends, they hard cut. Well, I'm sure it's a wipe of some kind. Hard wipe to CGI bugs.
Yeah, there you go.
On Kashyyyk. And it's just like, yeah, this movie's too normal for me. Let's cut to the CGI bugs. And it's not, it's nice for me at least. Again, I had the same note about the Jedi at the end of Attack of the Clones. It's nice to see so many Wookiees.
Mm-hmm.
And Wookiees in battle, which for all the talk of of what Chewbacca is capable of, we never really see in the movies until Solo.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wish it was Chewbacca free and that the Wookiees played some bigger role in the story.
That's the thing about this battle on the Wookiee planet. It just, it feels cursory.
Yeah.
Almost tacked on. It's performing no function narratively, really.
Yeah, no, it really could be, again, they could be anywhere, right? It could be any Star Wars legacy alien that Yoda happens to be on the same planet of.
And that's really the only reason to have it at all, right? To put Yoda there.
Yeah, to see him on the back of a... I mean, don't get me wrong, there's worse reasons to do something in a movie than to put Yoda on Chewbacca's back. I mean, yeah. As they say, if I had those resources at my disposal, I'd do much worse things for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's much more selfish things than that. So I like seeing it, but yeah, it doesn't. It's kind of caught in between not needing it at all and wanting much more out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're kind of left wanting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So Obi-Wan heads off to
whatever that planet's called.
Yeah.
That rock. Oedipal or something like that?
Sure.
Okay. I like the look of that planet. I like that kind of subterranean in the rocks.
And
I like the look.
I think the best example of practical creature design is in this scene, and it's such an incidental character. It's the guy who greets Obi-Wan when he gets off his
So this is what I was going to say. It's like a breath of fresh air when that creature arrives.
Yeah.
By the way, that is Bruce Spence, the gyro captain from Mad Max 2.
Oh, okay.
The Road Warrior.
Yeah, great, because this is all being produced in
and it's in Australia. But to see a live actor giving so much life to an alien character,
it's like Doug Jones level.
Oh man, it's oxygen just straight into the lungs, and I keep thinking, why don't you like this? How is this not great for you, George?
Because I see. Yeah. It is very incidental though. That the character goes nowhere.
Yeah, I mean that's the only time. Literally, that character's just going to tell Obi-Wan that Grievous is on the 10th floor or the 9th floor.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a great line, though. As he say, thousands of them. Battle droids, thousands of them. It's a good line.
It is. And in movies with not a lot of great lines.
Yeah, I know. It really stands
out.
Also, the music gets very Planet of the Apes when Obi-Wan starts riding a lizard.
Oh, boy. That lizard.
So... The last movie was like monster movies, like fantasy. This is more sort of science fiction, kind of 60s science fiction. The Trade Federation are back.
Yep.
But they're not allowed to speak.
We know why.
This is again, I know, but the movie knows why now. Like the movie's sort of like conscious of that. Even though, to this day, George Lucas will deny any racist intent to these characters or Jar Jar or Watto. It's from space. How can it be racist? They're from space.
I wrote down that it was, going back to that previous character, It was so great to see a real actor. Then we see Obi-Wan riding a lizard.
Mm-hmm. It's not even a good digital monster. Like we said, with, in Attack of the Clones, those monsters get all the heat, but they're more a convincing part of what's going on
of the world that we're in. And I also think it's a conspicuous animal to be on when you want to stealthily ride.
Yeah, it's a very loud animal.
It's a loud animal.
Imagine riding into town with that when you're trying to keep a low profile. Shut up!
Would you shut your fucking pipe?
Trying to keep a low profile here. He can't. Obi-Wan can't win with the animals, his transport animals.
No, never.
Because he's either got it coming out of the front end with this, or out the back end from his OPs.
Yeah. But it's also, it's funny because it's one of those, he sees Grievous, and it's, it kind of harkens back to what I was saying earlier. You see him on the top beam looking down, like, looking at everybody that's down there, and he kind of has, he's actually showing thinking. He's stroking his beard. He's like, I don't know, it's a lot of fucking people. And then he just jumps.
Yeah.
And it's like they just want to get to the joke. Hello there.
Yeah.
And that's all they want. Yeah. But narratively, he is outmanned right there. He's lucky that Grievous said, hey, nobody shoot him. He's mine.
He's so lucky that General Grievous is the worst foe we've ever seen in a Star Wars movie. Yeah, because he Jedi jumps and then he quotes the original trilogy. And when I'm watching this, I why don't I mind this? It feels like I should mind this.
But that's the thing.
And again, I think it's the charisma of Ewan McGregor. He's clearly enjoying himself so much. It's hard not to get swept along with that.
Yeah. Even
though what he's doing is the kind of like pointless fan service that I usually hate in franchise movies. I don't begrudge him this for some reason. And I guess also it kind of like never occurred. Like, I don't know. This can go both ways, but the opposite of this is Michael Keaton as Batman in The Flash. But it's like I never thought of "hello there" as his catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that makes it better in one sense. It's sort of like, oh, he's just saying hello there again. But, the other side of that is, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. He said that once in a very different context.
Right.
I got a lot of notes here about how Grievous's multi-lightsaber arms are all the bad qualities of the prequels boiled down into one.
Well, what I think is funny is that, 4 lightsabers against 1 on the surface seems like an unfair battle, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is fucked. But in truth, despite the fact that Grievous has been taught Jedi ways, he's not a Jedi. So he's actually pretty easy to dismantle. Therefore, he's not a good villain.
He's a robot camel, right? He's in design. It's sort of like they used the outline of Jar Jar to come up with the robot body,
right?
And it's just, and of course he's within minutes he's spouting spider legs because nothing in this trilogy can ever rest before spider legs are added.
We gotta get to the next spider legs.
And if you think about this again, why is The Phantom Menace a better movie than this? Because The Phantom Menace started with Jedi slashing through droids, and then the denouement of the movie is all human or humanoid combat.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, this movie is this is supposed to be our big action set piece, or one of our big action set pieces. And it's sillier than anything in the previous 2 movies. When he's in his gun wheel.
Right.
I mean, he's like a living demonstration of a toy line, isn't it? He just gets into his accessories in turn. I really dislike these sequences.
Well, and it's
unintentionally comic as well when he's when he's twirling the lightsabers and they're scratching.
That's
the floor.
meant to be menacing.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's unintentionally comic.
Right.
Because the old, like you say, or like it should be threatening, but the sheer act of him having it looks like he's not able to control any of these lightsabers because he's a robot camel with spider legs.
Right. What I like the most about it is when one of his arms gets chopped off and the lightsaber falls away. They always do this sort of shot of, huh? He's so surprised.
One thing about my villains is I like them to be coughing and spluttering a lot.
That's my favorite.
It gives them that extra level of menace.
Yeah.
And it's this, well, I mean, thematically, and this becomes clearer later, I suppose, or clearer in retrospect. Thematically, I understand Grievous because he's a foreshadow of what Anakin will become.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a kind of cyborg.
Yeah.
But he's more machine than man.
Yeah, right.
Thematically, I get it, but we just waste so much time on him, and it's so clear that he's gonna explode in a matter of minutes.
He's gonna that shriveled fucking heart and set of lungs or whatever else is underneath there. It doesn't look good. Give him 5 minutes. He'll probably die on his own.
And again, they have to sort of like work back from that because it's only because his armor is torn open a little bit that Obi-Wan can kill him with the blaster. And it's like, well, he still seems awfully easy to kill. If that's his vulnerability.
Well,
you had one blast to get rid of the armor, another blast
all
of the heart.
Yeah,
Dunzo.
Right. And I guess it's funny to me because in the moment it seems like it's that's the last thing that happens. So it's the climactic part of this huge battle between these two. And it goes for a while. I mean, it's probably altogether more than 10 minutes, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
At the very least, 8 to 10 minutes.
We cut away in the middle of it to some other action.
Do we?
I think we go back to the Senate or Padme or something.
Padme.
Don't we get some Space Jimmy Smits in the middle of this as well?
We might, yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't speak well of it.
Yeah.
If you can leave your action scene to go to some Senate business.
Right.
But he's got his lightning stick and he's getting kicked and thrown around, and then he's almost off the edge and grab the gun and laser blast, and it's I think it's built to be the end of Jaws.
Oh wow!
Smile, you son of a, and you kind of breathe a sigh of relief, and it never reaches that level.
No,
I mean it's just so far from it.
He's not a threat. So I mean, yeah, obviously he's a foreshadow of Anakin. I guess he's a take on the stereotype of this is again not something you want to bring back, the disabled villain, right? Because he's full of ailments.
Right.
Not he's already just a heart and a pair of eyes in a robot body, but they also have to make him like consumptive.
Yeah, exactly.
So why they ever thought that this would be like, even if Gary Oldman did do the voice, he would still have quite a hill to climb.
Could you imagine Gary Oldman? So he's a robot, but he's got tuberculosis. What's going on?
He's just, maybe it was written that way because it's like he's one of those actors. He needs business. He needs a little bit of business up to play.
Right.
Like Pacino in Godfather Part 3, how he's, they made him a diabetic just so he could have props to play with. You could see him struggling for candy bars and things like that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Garbage.
It really is terrible. It just sort of feels...
And again, this is the second scene in the movie.
This is the second scene.
This is the second real scene.
It's also so at the end of the first scene, during the first scene, not at the end, somewhere in the middle of the first scene, the last movie's villain died. We've had a new villain, now he's died in the second scene.
Yeah.
So I guess we need another villain, which is where Vader comes from.
Right.
Well, Vader and the Emperor, because they both yet to transform into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the middle of this, it's not. We are back on Coruscant, but it's Anakin and Palpatine again.
Because
Which
he's
contains.
Well, go ahead. I was just going to say that he tells the Chancellor that they do want him
Yeah.
to spy on him.
And is this where he's like, by the way, if you know anything, if you know anything about saving someone from death, is it
Exactly, yeah.
He throws it in. It's like, and I love the idea of like Palpatine getting his rocks off when he feels like a Jedi wants to kill him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Because not only is that a funny, entertaining idea, but also the same thing in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, right.
When he's like, clearly the way what Luke's desire to kill him is doing to him goes beyond, a normal person's reaction, and it becomes very sexual very quickly. And the same, and there's a consistency. There's a sort of sexual through line in him getting his rocks off at the thought, which I really like. I love the fact that Ian McDermott remembered that he did that in the other movies. Is able to bring it back. I wouldn't have remembered something like that.
This is the one where, in this moment, Anakin pulls his lightsaber on him.
Oh, are we there already?
Or are we not?
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting it. It all sort of happens out of once. At once, we've seen spaceships taking off and landing. And now all the plot is happening in the space of about 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a clothing note: Anakin's dressed just like Luke in Return of the Jedi. So
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like retrospectively makes it seem like, that theory that Luke is heading for the dark side in Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's reaffirmed by again, that they diverge. This is the point at which Anakin and Luke diverge in their lives. They take different roads.
Right.
Again, back to that point about Anakin's turn to Vader seems far more circumstantial and coincidental than it should. So,
yeah, right.
If Windu made a different call in that moment, I guess it makes it more tragic in a way, but it just reminds me of how arbitrary it is. That if Mace, so he tells Windu, he's like, "Hey, this guy's a Sith Lord," and when Mace Windu sort of says, "No, you stay here," if he'd have said, "Come with me, be my backup," probably
be my
wouldn't
backup,
have turned
right?
to the dark side.
Maybe not.
And I don't think that should be the difference between being Darth Vader and being Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker.
Well, but I wanna back up a little bit too. Obviously the Cirque du Soleil scene is the best scene probably in all of
Yeah.
In these
Definitely.
3 movies, but atmospherically, there was something going on when. So he comes back. He confronts Palpatine. Palpatine basically says, "Hey, I got a lot to teach you. Let's talk dark side." And so he realizes who he is. He's like, "Motherfucker!" He pulls out his lightsaber, and like you said, he kind of gets his rocks off. He's very excited, and Anakin just kind of puts his sword away and says, "I'm telling the Jedi, I'm coming to get you." And we have that scene between him and Mace Windu, and he says, "Sit still." But then he goes back to, I guess, his own place. Yeah. He goes back to his own place while Padme
wait.
is looking out windows.
Anakin goes back to the place to where he's sleeping over at his wife's house.
So is that it? Because they're separated, though. They're separated. But they keep toggling back and forth between them as they're pensively,
I think, yeah.
You get what he's doing. But all I wanted to say was, I'm really drawn into this movie at this point, even though it had, there's nothing happening narratively like there is in the Cirque du Soleil scene. They're not talking with each other; they're separate. But there's something about mood that really sets off well as he's thinking, like he's making a. You could see Hayden Christensen actually making a choice, because he's been told to stay, sit still, and he's gonna make the choice to go. I don't know what the fuck Padme's thinking, but at least she's doing some good acting, whatever she is thinking. But the sound is muted. There's this like low, ominous, really cool music playing all over it, and I love that kind of toggling back and forth. It's so atmospheric that it reminds me of the Cirque du Soleil scene, just without anything important happening narratively. But I still really like it. I think
you're right, and I think there's the visual side of that is we've got more of a brown and black color palette in this film, which gives it a kind of autumnal feeling. Which I think reads through a lot of the scenes here in Coruscant. Always seems to be sunset. Wherever they are. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot of color and shadow. The ability to do that with a digital landscape has clearly improved. Right. It feels like they're refining the look of a digital movie. Finally, at the end of this trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're about at the 2-hour mark. Yeah. Maybe
not in the movie.
I guess we should save. Yeah, right.
Not even close to 2 hours of the movie. I think that's a perfect place to stop. Yeah, let's end on a positive note.
We'll come back to the lightning accident.
Yes. Yes, we'll talk about how uncomfortable Ian McDermott was with doing a sword fight. Much to the amusement of Sam Jackson.
Yeah, but he gives all props to. He said, obviously, I couldn't do as much, so I had a wonderful stunt double, and thank God for that.
I have Christopher Lee's knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is the perfect place to spot. I'm about halfway through my notes as well. Again, it's difficult to tell if we're halfway through the movie. It feels like the movie's nearly over, and yet nothing has really happened.
Don't know. Yeah, exactly. The movie should be almost over, but it's not.
It really isn't. We've dispensed with both of the movie's so much more villains. To go. The war is basically won.
Yeah, it's over.
And that's the other thing. It's like that's something disingenuous. Like, not only have we gone from is it like feast to famine when it comes to language,
the Emperor,
but also like beginning war. It's also kind of like it should more accurately be war's nearly done. Because we begin like the movie
war is almost over.
The less successful John Lennon Christmas record. Merry Christmas, war's almost over. Although that would be more. It would be more realistic. Sorry, I said John Lennon. Of course, it's the Yoko Ono. It's Yoko Ono band featuring John Lennon.
Okay, fine. If you,
I don't want anyone thinking I'm on the wrong side of that debate. love Yoko Ono. Love her art. Love her music. And Peter Jackson's Get Back will prove that she was not to blame.
She was not. Yeah, she was.
It's all George Harrison's fault, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
That's the crazy part of this. It's like, wow, George Harrison's the only one who actually said out loud, "Let's break up."
Fuck this.
Anyway, I can't remember what I was saying. Yeah, war's almost over. So it's just a feeling of having waited again since '77 for the Clone Wars. We don't get to see any of it, except the sort of last table scraps of the war. Yeah,
right.
One
just the Wookiee
a crash
portion.
landing and then the death of a robot camel.
Yeah, you get to see one non-important Wookiee battle, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh well.
What can I say? Anything left for you?
No. I think I was just thinking. I was like, yeah, we end on a positive note, and then I inject quite a lot of negativity. But we talked about the best.
You're fine.
The best scene in the trilogy is in this movie.
Agreed. Some good shit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna have to tell us what you think Talk to us. Revenge of the Sith.
I've been getting a lot of
How do you feel?
feedback. It's been good.
I have read that some emails, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in our pitch a sequel segment.
Right.
But man, what's some great?
Because it's the only space we have.
We had some, yeah. It's the only space that won't be very long.
I know, yeah. You'll hear some listeners' comments.
I'm sure it'll be regular episode long.
Right.
As opposed to shorter, yeah.
I love how like you began this episode by saying, "Can you believe that this sequence was originally an hour long?" It's like,
I know.
We're not great timekeepers ourselves. I don't think we have the right to.
Yeah, we should shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I'm fine with it, you know.
Well,
I've never felt uncomfortable about giving this much airtime to the prequels.
Oh, I know.
I know it's been a struggle with you, but you come to realize there's a lot to talk about. More than most movies.
Yeah. It can't be denied.
It's kind of funny because when we did our Patreon episode for the month, or Patreon episodes for the month, I was like, oh god, are we gonna just end up talking no matter what the movie is and how short it is? Are we so used to talking for hours on end that we're not gonna get this in? I won't tell you what the movie is. It'll let it be a surprise because it hasn't been released yet. But we were just like, no.
Straight back
to that sort of between 1 and 2 hour mark that I was just like,
1.5.
Like, it's just Star Wars that does it to us.
Yeah.
We're not the problem. Star Wars is the problem.
Star Wars is the problem. All right, ladies and gentlemen, find us on Facebook, Instagram, or shitbag. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. We're getting some good feedback on these particular movies, and we'll shout you out. We're loving it, so keep going. And that's it. Part 1 is in the books. Part 2 coming at you next week. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye, Tom.
Time to abandon ship. That's an actual line from General Grievous in this movie. If you saw that in Thundercats, you'd be like, ooh, too arch.
Is that when he does his out the window?
Yeah, he says, ha ha ha, time to abandon ship. I mean, this is who you're replacing Christopher Lee with?
Yeah, that's no good.
For about an hour? Less than an hour? 20 minutes?
Well, thank God he's dead, and he's going to be out of our hearts and minds for the rest of the episode. Not this
I don't want to think about what happened
episode.
to his heart and mind.
Yeah. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out.